nek zemlja se zadrma.
Kreni!
I asfalt i kaldrma.
Kreni!
Pokreni me bedrima, njedrima, njedrima, kao sa jedrima. Njedrima, kao sa jedrima.
I'm going to start by adding 200 ml of milk to a bowl and heating it up in the microwave for about 30 seconds, just so it gets nice and warm. And then I'm going to add 1 packet, which is about 7 grams, of dry instant yeast. I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of sugar, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a stir or a whisk, just so all the ingredients dissolve. Once I've done that, I'm going to set it aside and leave it for about 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, your yeast mixture should be nice and frothy. And now you're ready to prepare your dough. Add 2 eggs to a mixing bowl and lightly beat. Then add 2 tablespoons of room temperature butter. You can melt the butter here if you prefer. Add 100 ml of plain yogurt and then 1 teaspoon of salt. Give a quick mix and then add your yeast mixture. Add 600 grams of flour. I'm going to bring this over to my mixing machine to knead, and I'm just going to use these kneading prongs which came with my machine. I'm going to set it on low and let this knead for 5 minutes. Now you don't have to use a machine, you can do it by hand for about 5 to 10 minutes. After 5 minutes, your dough should be nice and elastic. Now I'm going to bring this over to a floured working surface and knead it by hand for the last minute. I always like to knead by hand, even just for a minute or so, before I let the dough rise, just to make sure I can feel that the dough is a nice even consistency. Once I've done that, I'm going to oil the bowl, put the dough in and then flip it around so that both sides of the dough are oiled. I'm then going to cover it with a cloth and put it in a nice dark warm place. A warmed oven is perfect for this. After the dough is risen, put it onto a floured surface and punch out all the excess air. Then use a rolling pin to create a large rectangle shape with a dough about 1/4 inch thick. Melt about 2 tablespoons of good quality butter. I like to use Danish butter. And then about 2/3 of that spread over the large rectangle of dough. Fold your dough in half and then brush the remaining butter over the smaller rectangle. Once you've done that, fold it in half again so you've got 1/4 of the size, and let sit for about 10 to 15 minutes to allow the butter to soak through the dough. After 10 to 15 minutes, we're going to repeat this process again, where we roll out the dough into a large rectangle. We're going to melt yet another 2 tablespoons of butter, and we're going to brush about 2/3 of that onto the large rectangle, fold it in half, and then the last third of the butter we're going to brush onto the medium-sized rectangle, fold in half again, and then let sit for yet another 10 to 15 minutes. And now for the third and final time, we're going to roll out the dough into a large rectangle and melt another 2 tablespoons of butter, and we're going to brush most of the butter this time onto the large rectangle, and then just reserving just a small amount to brush onto whichever baking pan that you want to use to bake your bread in. I'm going to use a large oblong pan. You can use a square one, a round one, whatever shape that you want this bread to take. Now I'm going to roll the dough as tightly as I can to make a long log shape. I'm then going to put it on a chopping board and neaten up the ends, and using a sharp knife I'm going to cut the log into about 1 inch to 1.5 inch slices. Place the slices cut side down into your baking pan, making sure they're nice and tightly pressed against each other. Once they're all in, just give a gentle pat down with your hands to make sure they're all nice and even. Then place into a preheated oven on 180 degrees Celsius for 40 to 50 minutes. And there you have your rose pull-apart bread. You can serve this in the pan, or you can wait for it to cool and serve out of the pan. I hope you enjoy.
Kreni, nek zemlja se zadrma, kreni, I asfalt I kaldrma, kreni, pokreni me